Nokia is all in on cameras, devoting the bulk of its resources and marketing into making phones like the Lumia 1020 have the best possible camera. But will taking better photos be enough to make someone choose the Lumia 1020? I'm Andrew with mobileburn.com, here to review the latest Windows Phone 8 smartphone. The Nokia Lumia 1020 is the marriage between Windows Phone 8 and the Symbian-powered PureView 808. On the Windows Phone side, it's textbook Lumia, a big rectangle with half-circle edges and eye-catching colors. Those colors, yellow, a smoky black, and white, are polycarbonate and remain visible even when the phone is scratched or chipped away when you drop it. The matte finish feels really good to touch, and it has a balance of smoothness and grip. The Lumia 1020 also has a 4.5-inch OLED display with 1280 by 768 resolution. That looks good as well, though the color profile isn't as striking as you hope. Colors are a tiny bit darker than you'd expect, so yellow takes on kind of a mustard appearance, and whites aren't as bright as they are on LCD screens. Still, Nokia compensates for that with a screen that tweaks the motion to make it smooth and fast. It's great for use in sunlight and is sensitive enough to work even when you have gloves on. Even with the slightly off color profile, I really like the quality of the display. I'm also a fan of the Lumia 1020 body, which is eerily similar to what we've seen before. There's a headphone jack and micro SIM slot at the top. There's controls for volume, power, and camera all on the right side, and those are aluminum and give a very nice feedback when you press into them. There's a micro USB port on the bottom that's wedged between speakers and a latch to connect it to a tassel or separately sold camera grip. Again, they're really trying to make this feel like one of the best cameras out there, not just a phone that happens to have a camera with it. Those speakers are smaller than what you see on the Lumia 920, and they don't reach as high a volume, but they're of decent quality and are audible for speakerphone or music. Internally, there's a 1.5 GHz dual-core Snapdragon processor and 2 GB of RAM. The processor is what you typically expect, but the RAM is an uptick, and that's because of the advanced camera stuff that they have going on. And it pays off in other areas because Windows Phone already feels pretty smooth, but with that extra bit of RAM, it feels just a tiny bit smoother. Everything that I've just mentioned means nothing because the Lumia 1020 is all about the camera. There's a reason Nokia spent the bulk of its product announcement talking about the virtues of the 1020's camera, and it's impossible not to see it dominate the top third of the device. A 41 megapixel sensor takes beautiful photos at various sizes and ratios. The camera looks like a stack of pepperoni on an otherwise flat surface, but it's really aluminum and Gorilla Glass 3 protecting the 6 lenses that take all of those photos. A xenon flash is included that actually does a good job at taking photos at nighttime, and it does capture more details in the background. Now I know I had some negative things to say about the xenon flash in the 928, but I've come to see that this type of flash is a way of balancing out light a little more efficiently and delivering photos with more life to them. The colors aren't as you expect them to be in real life, but when you compare it, it does look good in many instances. The Lumia 1020 also has an LED flash that can remain on when you're shooting video, and that brings me to my next point. Video recording on this device is fantastic. The 1080p HD recordings are sharp and smooth, and not just by smartphone standards. It's easily my favorite aspect of the phone, so be sure to view the camera samples that we have in another video. And I have to admit that the pictures are pretty damn good too. Now, the Lumia 1020 actually takes 2 photos at once. One is 34 to 38 megapixels depending on the aspect ratio, and the other is a 5 megapixel photo that condenses the information captured in the other. Without getting too technical, the 1020 uses something called oversampling. It basically captures more image qualities that it needs, more light, more details, and then it simplifies that package into a 5 megapixel image that's easier to share online and still looks very good. It's the same concept that we saw with the PureView 808, but they brought it to Windows Phone and made it work in this case. You still got the 6 lenses, you've got optical image stabilization, and a lot of tweaking going on to make sure you get as good a photo as possible. Part of that is they have a new app called the Pro Camera. This lets you change white balance, exposure, ISO, and flash. Now yes, you could do that before in the standard camera app that included with Nokia, but they've made it much simpler and it's a nicer interface with tabs and adjustable dials. Well, actually tabs is a bad word to say it because everything's on one page and it's easy to jump in. You tap on something, you move the dial along, and you can adjust any of the settings. Now, this is something similar to what we've seen on other manufacturers, but I find Nokia's way of doing it to be the easiest out of them all. Aside from that, you also have the smart camera, which allows you to do things like remove people from the background or take several shots at once and choose the best one. Now, having multiple camera apps might seem like a little overkill, but it's kind of nice to separate them and make sure that each function is easy and it's less work for you to navigate between the different functions. And just in case you want to set the camera button to launch a specific camera app, you can do that on the Lumia 1020. Unfortunately, the upgrade in camera means that you can't get wireless charging built in natively. There's just no room for it. Now, you can buy an attachment that does support Qi wireless charging, but that kind of defeats the purpose. It also makes the phone a little bit thicker and require a bit of maneuvering when you hold the 1020. The camera house feels foreign at first, but you can place your fingers below the device or cup your hand to make it feel a little more comfortable. As for the software, the Lumia 1020 runs Windows Phone 8, and that's a gift and a curse. It's the same old Windows Phone that we've seen in several devices. The start screen is great because it bends to your will. The live tiles on display show shortcuts to apps, notifications about incoming messages, and news alerts. It would be nice to have a dedicated notification center in Windows Phone 8 to prevent having to scroll through all of these apps to see individual updates. Still, the tiles make for a flat UI that reflects what you wish to see, and it can definitely come in handy if you don't need to check a lot of updates. AT&T includes a bunch of preloaded carrier bloatware, including apps for driving navigation and cloud storage. You'll want to ignore them. There's actually a better mapping app built into the device from Here Maps. It's not great, but it's better than what AT&T has for sure. And you can also get SkyDrive or Box to best the AT&T locker, and there are similar replacements for it in the Windows Phone store. Scrolling through the Windows Phone store will not be as fruitful because there's still some big name apps missing, and in other cases the apps are there, but they're lesser versions that trail the features available on Android or iOS. Now, don't tell me they're third-party alternatives because I'm aware of that, but let's be honest, they're rarely as good as the original. And so when you purchase a Windows Phone device, you pretty much know you're going to play a waiting game. An app's going to go to iOS first, maybe go to Android a few weeks later, and then it's going to come to Windows Phone 8 several months later at a minimum. So you have to be prepared for that. They've made some strides, Flipboard, Path, Vine, and a couple of other apps are making their way to Windows Phone 8, but it's still a waiting game, and you know that you're not going to get apps as fast as you will on other platforms. But let's try to focus on the positive. Microsoft tries to make the software that's available on the device from the jump very good, and in some cases they're successful. Like the SkyDrive linked Microsoft Office remains the best way to write, read, and edit documents on a mobile device. It's powerful, it's simple, very easy to use, and it's linked online so everything backs up and saves very quickly. There's also a really fast keyboard with solid word correction, so it's nice there. In some areas, the app is actually pretty good, but it's not very useful, like Rooms. Rooms is a nice way to monitor your friends and have group communication, but unfortunately it relies on other people having Windows Phone, and that's probably not the case. There's no unified solution for Android or iOS, so they're going to have to do piecemeal solutions, and it's just not ideal. Overall, the package of software on Windows Phone 8 is good, but your app choices are not going to be as varied or as fast as they will be on other platforms. Now, obviously, I wish the app situation on Windows Phone 8 were better, but it's coming along. And let's be honest, nobody is buying the Nokia Lumia 1020 because of Windows Phone. They're buying it because of that 41 megapixel sensor. In fact, unless you're into mobile photography, you probably won't consider this device at all. At $300 on contract, it's more expensive than an iPhone and an HTC One, despite having identical unsubsidized prices. I think that this camera is better than the alternatives at AT&T, but better enough to warrant spending more and dealing with fewer app options? I'm not so sure about that. If you're a Windows Phone fan, if you're someone who takes out your phone constantly to take pictures, it might be worth grabbing the Lumia 1020 because of that game-changing camera. But for other people, it might be overkill. It's going to be more than you need, so you might just want a good phone that takes good pictures. But in the right hands, the Lumia 1020 is going to have a good enough software package and a great enough camera option to make this something that you'll definitely consider and spend that extra few dollars on. This is Andrew from mobileburn.com reviewing the Nokia Lumia 1020. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe and check out some of the other videos on our channel. Thanks for watching.